Today? Everybody got their fingers still from yesterday? Good? Good. Anybody light off any fireworks that illegally? I didn't. I'm not raising my hand to say I did.
Mark doesn't want to.
So you look at Mark, he's like, who's lighting off fireworks?
I had a Friday night last night. So
Yeah, how about that Ala Moana fireworks show though, right? That was awesome. And for those of you who don't know, or that were somewhere else for fireworks, they didn't launch off the fireworks. Bummer. Disappointing. Okay, before we get started here, I want to introduce you to Alora. Alora, come up just real quick. You don't have to say anything, or just stand up. You don't have to come up. This is Alora. She is going to help us out with the Nutrition Challenge. She studied nutrition. Like, I've just picked some things up along the way. She knows it. So when you guys schedule your consults, you're going to get 4 of them, right? They're going to be with either both of us or one of us. It's your choice, right? So we'll figure that one out. On that idea of the consults, you get 4. So you get 2 scans, and then you get 2 one-on-ones with us. All right, so here's what we want to do. I'll get into the lecture in just a second, but when it comes to the challenge, what we want you to do in this first 4 weeks, you need to find time to get with one of us, and we're going to scan you. All right, I've got a questionnaire for you to fill out before this meeting. We're going to do an in-body scan. The in-body scan, it tells us everything that's going on. It tells us your muscle mass, your bone density, your fat mass, your hydration. It tells us your basal metabolic rate. It tells us your visceral fat. There's a lot of details that we can get from this scan. We're going to use this scan as the baseline of where you are before the challenge. You get a second scan, but I don't think you should do your second scan at the 8-week mark. I think you should do your second scan like 4 weeks after the challenge. So you're going to take 8 weeks to learn all this stuff, figure out how to apply it, and then you're going to sit down with us with one of our one-on-ones, and we're going to figure out what's best for you. And 4 or 6 weeks later, do your second scan. Now, you've done 1 scan, 1 consult, 1 scan, or excuse me, 1 consult, and another scan. So you have 4. So we can extend this out if you want to, up to about 16 weeks. So think about 8 weeks to learn, 8 weeks to apply. Does that make sense? Now it's up to you when you want to set those schedules and when you want to come talk to us. If you want to get it right away, if you want to extend it further, there's not a wrong way of doing it. So you got 2 specifically one-on-one consults with us, and then you got 2 scans, which are also going to be similar to a consult. Go for it. Sound good? All right, let's talk about it. Let me see if this is recording. It is. Okay. We're going to get to this video up here in just a second. I'm going to show you a small portion of it, but then I'm going to send it to you, and I want you to watch the whole thing. All right, it has a lot of good information in it. But before we get to that, let's talk about what we're going to be doing, what this challenge is all about. So it's the order of operations. These are the things that the body needs to maintain homeostasis. Anybody know what homeostasis is? We'll talk about it in a second. What's that? Steady state. Look at this. Without oxygen, you've only got a few minutes and you die, right? We need oxygen. And then without water, you've only got a few days and then you die. We need water. What thing's next? What's the next thing that we do without, if we don't have, we die? Sleep. Without sleep, we die, right? A little morbid here, that's how it works. And then what's next? Nutrition. And then finally, resistance. Right, so this is the order of operations. These are the things necessary for survival. These are the things necessary for homeostasis, right? Now this resistance piece, that's what we come here for, right? The resistance part is fun. So we're going to concentrate on these first 4 weeks on all of this, but very specifically these first 3, right? So let's talk about homeostasis real quick. What is homeostasis? It's a fancy word that really just means balance. So it's your body's ability to maintain balance and stability, right? Regulates temperature, hormones, and hydration. Homeostasis keeps you alive, functioning at your best, right? So homeostasis is just a fancy word that your body's running optimally. Now, we think of optimally, you might think of like the best. Running optimally means the way it's supposed to, right? So homeostasis isn't Usain Bolt maxing out. Homeostasis is your body doing exactly what it's designed to do. In today's day and age, there's a lot of factors that interfere with just our body operating naturally. So that's what we're looking for in this challenge. We want to find homeostasis. Its first 4 weeks are designed to getting our system, right, working the way that it's designed to work. Now, when we look at these next 4 weeks, we're going to kind of break it down like this. This week, we're going to concentrate on sleep, hydration, and sunlight. I'll explain it here in a second. Then we're going to work on movement, your evening routine, so properly finding time to fall asleep. Week 3, we're going to focus a little bit more on movement, creating habits you might already have, but creating habits of movement 5 to 6 times per week. We're going to start tracking food, and then on that last week, we're going to talk about preparing your food, stop eating out, and start making your own food, right? Because the most control we can have is when we make our own food. All right, I'm going to play this video. This is Andrew Huberman. He's got this video is great. A lot of this stuff talks about homeostasis, and you're going to hear him talk about circadian rhythm, right? Circadian rhythm plays a big role in our homeostasis. Does anybody know what circadian rhythm is? Some of you do, right? It's your body's 24-hour cycle, right? When we throw off that 24-hour cycle, we start to get away from homeostasis. All right, this is Andrew Huberman.
Hello and welcome to a special episode of After School. I'm Andrew Huberman, professor of neurobiology and ophthalmology at Stanford School of Medicine. I'm also the host of the Huberman Lab podcast, a weekly podcast focused on science and science-based tools.
You're going to get a few videos from this guy. I'll tell you about him in a second.
Tools for optimizing your morning routine. So without further ado, practical tools for optimizing your morning routine. There are certain foundational behaviors, do's and don'ts, that set the stage for you to be better at everything. So a lot of times people say, how can I lift more, focus better, remember things better? It's like, well, let's think about the foundation of that. And that's always going to come back to 2 elements, and that's sleep and what I call non-sleep, deep rest. So sleep is the fundamental practice or part of our 24-hour cycle where if you don't get it on a consistent basis, you are down-regulating your ability to do everything, right? Metabolism is screwed up, immune system is screwed up, et cetera, et cetera. However, it is not the case if you get one night's bad sleep, or that if you're not sleeping perfectly that you can't perform well. But let's talk about sleep, and just because I think it's important. The goal for most people, unless you're pulling vampire shifts on deployment or you're a shift worker, and thank you shift workers, we'll talk about shift work, you should try and get really good sleep 80% of the time. 80% of the nights of your life. The other 20%, I hope you're not getting good sleep for good reasons that you enjoy. But the point is that there are a couple things that you can do. First of all, every cell in your body has a circadian rhythm, meaning every cell has a 24-hour circadian clock that's regulated by genes. Think of it as your body as a bunch of millions of clocks and needs you to align those clocks to a single time. This is why when you travel overseas, your gut goes off, or it's more easily you get sick, or your thinking isn't quite right. The clocks aren't in alignment. They're not in train, as we say. Number 1 practice for everything, sleep especially, is try and get some natural light in your eyes within an hour of waking up. If you wake up before the sun, turn on a bunch of bright lights and then get sunlight in your eyes once it comes out. If there's dense cloud cover, there are still more photons, light energy coming through that cloud cover than there are coming from artificial lights. So try and get 5 to 10 minutes without sunglasses outside in the morning, once the sun is out. Most days, if not all days. This has an outsized effect on a number of things. First of all, it modulates the timing of what's called the cortisol pulse. Once every 24 hours, you're going to get a boost in cortisol, big spike in cortisol. It's a healthy boost. It sets your temperature rhythm in motion, sets your level of alertness, your level of focus, and your mood. You want that cortisol pulse to happen as early in the day as possible.
What's triggering the cortisol pulse?
The cortisol pulse is naturally entrained by these genetic programs to happen once every 24 hours, but light will anchor it to the period where you see bright light.
Got it.
A late shifted cortisol pulse. So imagine the kid that wakes up and spends the morning in bed, or you're spending the morning in bed and you're texting, or you're indoors and you're typing on the computer. That's not enough light to accomplish what I'm talking about. And then you go outside around noon or 1, you're in what's called the circadian dead zone, which is the time in which light arriving at the eyes can do certain things, but it can't time this pulse. That means that cortisol pulse is going to come in the afternoon, which means that your temperature rhythm is going to be shifted late, and that's actually a signature of depression and anxiety and difficulty falling asleep. Many people are waking up and they're just spending time indoors and they're putting on sunglasses, getting in their car, driving, or there's cloud cover and they think there's no sun out. I don't mean that you actually have to stare at the sun. Never stare at any light so bright it's going to damage you. Please don't. And blink as necessary. But the indirect rays from the sun trigger these cells in the eyes called melanopsin ganglion cells. These ganglion cells, these are neurons. They send a signal to your hypothalamus. Then the hypothalamus releases this peptide, which is a wake-up signal for your whole brain and body, and sets a timer for the onset of melatonin release 16 hours later, melatonin being the hormone that makes you sleepy and makes you want to go to sleep. So you can imagine what happens if you don't get that light until a few hours later. Everything's shifted, and then you want to go to sleep. Don't know why you're wide awake at 11:30 or 12 and everything's messed up. The other thing is that you can get bright light from electronic devices early in the day, but it's not enough. You need photons from sunlight. Now, if you live in Scandinavia in the depths of winter, if you're up in like, Trondheim or Aarhus or something, like, okay, fine. Don't buy an expensive daytime simulator. Get one of these LED light boxes for drawing.
We don't have to worry about that. We live in Hawaii. Plenty of sunlight.
You can find them on Amazon. I don't have a relationship to any of these brands, but they're easy to find, $20, $30. Put that on your desk and just look at that thing for a few minutes in the morning. Not as good, but better than being in the darkness. Then when the sun's out, get outside. Now, this is a huge, huge effect for the following reason. The signal that arrives from the eyes to the hypothalamus also triggers the release of the neuromodulator dopamine. We hear about dopamine as a feel-good molecule, dopamine, and dopamine hits. But dopamine's main role in the brain and body is to drive motivation, craving, and pursuit. It is not the molecule of pleasure, it is the molecule of drive. It is life force. Dopamine is actually the molecule from which adrenaline, epinephrine, is manufactured. And you may notice you said we crave sun. It also does make you feel good. Here's why. If you think about seasonally breeding animals, let's think about the Arctic fox. Well, the Arctic fox in winter is white.
So we want to end on that dopamine place. You've heard of dopamine, right? If we aren't in homeostasis, right? If we don't have our rhythm set, if we're not sleeping regularly, we simply don't get the amounts of dopamine that the body needs. You heard him say it, dopamine has nothing to do with feeling good. Even though we kind of associate it with it, it's your drive to complete tasks. If you took dopamine out of your system completely, you wouldn't even have the desire to breathe. There's a story, he actually tells a story about some drug addicts that broke into a lab. This lab was trying to create synthetic dopamine, and they figured out a way to do it, but they also created the opposite of it. Well, these drug addicts got the opposite of it. So they consumed this chemical, and it burned all the dopamine receptors in their body. Somebody came into the lab, and they found these people laying on the ground. They had to take them to the hospital. They kept them alive, but they have to be on breathing apparatuses. They have to be fed. They have to be given water because they have zero desire to complete and do anything. So just simply not sleeping correctly makes it hard for us to complete the tasks that we want to complete, let alone the tasks that we don't want to. All right, so we're going to concentrate this first week on creating sleep opportunity. And what I mean by sleep opportunity is you're going to set aside 8 hours that you are going to be trying to sleep. You might not have the ability to fall asleep right away. Maybe you're used to your 4 or 5 hours a night. So being asleep for 8 hours is something you get to train your body to do. So in this first week, what we're going to work on is setting aside 8 hours. Ideally, the same 8 hours every day that we have the opportunity to sleep. But we're going to be in bed, lights off, eyes closed. We're also going to work on this sunlight piece, right? So we talked about the sunlight and setting circadian rhythm. We don't have to go outside and stare at the sun, but if we can find an excuse to be outside for 10 minutes every morning, right? So we're going to work on that this week. And we're also going to work on starting the day properly with hydration, right? Now, before we get into how these are going to work, I want you to look and know about the 80-20 rule. And this is important, right? The 80-20 rule. I'm almost always perfect 80% of the time. The other 20% of the time, I've got grace for myself and I'm enjoying life, right? Now, this challenge isn't about being perfect, it's about finding consistency, right? Now, we do want to take time. Maybe it's during this 8 weeks, maybe it's the 8 weeks plus the 4 or 6 that you're going to do, and we'll go as best we can to be perfect, right? But we know that we can't sustain perfection indefinitely. So we want to find a balance but we want to find consistency in what we're doing. Any questions so far on what we got? We're talking about? Yes. We're talking about that. So there's not like a bag you're filling with hours of sleep. When you lose sleep or when you don't sleep, the damage is done, right? So you don't get to like not sleep or sleep 4 hours on Friday night and then on Saturday night sleep 12 hours and have a combined total of 16 hours of sleep. It doesn't work that way. Although your body probably did benefit from that 12 hours of sleep, you still spent more money or created a bigger cost than what you gained by sleeping those 12 hours. So it's more important to find 8 hours consistently. Now the hard part is the weekends, right? Some of us have different schedule on the weekends. Ideally, you find the same sleep schedule even on the weekends, right? Maybe you get more sleep on the weekends instead of less. But the 80-20 rule, we're looking to go and be as consistent as possible, right? So I don't want you to get so wrapped around if you are struggling and you feel like you've got 3 or 4 days that you've missed. Don't give up on it. Just find that consistency. All right, let me grab my notes here. So, all right. Sleep. So we've talked a little bit about sleep. Andrew, you've been talking about sleep. What we're aiming for, 7 to 8 hours of sleep opportunity every night. Sleep impacts recovery. It impacts your hunger. There's a study that shows if you get less than 8 hours of sleep, you're more likely to overeat that day than if you got your 8 hours of sleep, right? Because your body's looking for motivation and looking for energy. It's also going to control the hunger hormones, right? So your body releases hormones. Every reaction that you have, there's a hormone involved with it. So if you're not getting proper sleep and your hormones aren't operating correctly, you're throwing off your homeostasis. And then of course stress, right? If you lack sleep, you're going to find stress is going to come at you a lot faster. And then we're going to do morning hydration. So 7 to 8 hours of sleep opportunity for week 1. The next one, hydration, we're not going to be concerned about the amount of hydration, right? What I want you to concern about and get in the habit of is starting your day hydrated. So we're going to look for 16 to 32 ounces of water within the first 30 minutes of waking up. Now, ideally, that water is electrolyte enriched. Maybe an element packet, a sprinkle of salt, right? Let's talk about electrolytes just for a second. There's a syndrome called the white jug syndrome. Have you ever heard of this? The white jug syndrome came about in the late 2000s when it was really cool to walk around with a gallon jug of water, right? Like you would intentionally set it out in front of people because that was when water became popular, right? Like, here's my white jug, I'm hydrated. Well, what they found out, people were drinking these gallons of water, they were buying them from the gas station, and it was actually dehydrating them. Right? So what happens, you have electrolytes in your system. Electrolytes are the ions of the world, the magnesiums, potassium, sodiums, right? When you don't have those in your system, your water can't absorb. So you need, like let's say this is a cell, right? You got your bloodstream running right along with it. The water can't enter that cell unless there's an ion or an electrolyte that allows that water in. So you have 2 different types of water in your system. You have extracellular, which means outside the cell, and you have intracellular, which is inside the cell. If the water is not inside the cell, it's not doing any good. Right? So if we don't have electrolytes, it doesn't matter how much water you're drinking. So we need to have enriched drink. So goal or habit that we're going to try to form on week 1 for hydration is we're going to try to get 16 to 32 ounces of water, ideally electrolyte water. All right, if you need help with electrolytes, I recommend Element, LMNT. I'm addicted to it. Pretty much drink it every day. Now, the other thing that we did a study of this in the Army because they were having a hard time getting soldiers to stay hydrated. They know that you're 10 times more likely to consume the right amount of hydration when it's flavored. You're 100 times more likely to consume the right amount of hydration when you have flavors to choose from. So if you, like me, you need your water to have taste to it, then figure out something that works for you. Make sure you're reading the packages, right? Element's a good one. Make sure you're reading the packages, but if you need to flavor your water, flavor it with some electrolyte stuff. Right? I had another thought. Yeah, what's up? So that's what we're looking for, right? A pinch of salt in your water, and you don't even need to taste the salt, right? You can put so little salt in there, you don't even taste it. Yeah, salt. That's a great. What's that? Yeah, so most highly filtered water, they're filtering the minerals out of it. All right, now, my wife and I, we go out of our way to drink mineral water. One of my biggest expenses is my Italian sparkling water, right? I'm addicted to it now, but it's full of minerals. When you think about it, we call it mineral water, but all water is mineral water. Every other water lacks minerals, right? So tap water typically lacks minerals, right? There might be a little bit in there, but not much. But if you think about our hunting and gathering days, we were surviving out in the middle of nowhere, every water source that we had was full of minerals. It already was naturally full of electrolytes. So we need to drink water that contains electrolytes. Otherwise, we're just gonna cycle the system. So the opposite thing happens. When your water doesn't have electrolytes in it, it actually grabs the electrolytes out of your system and you push them out. So you can lower your hydration by drinking water that lacks electrolytes. So we need to make it a point to get those electrolytes in the system. What's that? For 30 minutes. So the question is, within how long? We want to get in the habit of it kind of being part of your wake up routine, right? There's also going to be we're going to add protein into this in a few weeks when we get into the nutrition part, but we want to start the day ahead of hydration, not behind on hydration. Now just think of it like this. 3 days and you're cooked, right? If you don't have water. So if I got 8 hours of sleep, but I also probably didn't drink water 4 or 6 hours before I went to bed because I don't want to wake up and pee, I'm waking up already a half a day close to death, right? And so that if I don't consume any water until, I don't know, a few hours later, I'm really pushing it already. And that's just like an everyday thing for a lot of people, right? So what we want to do is we want to start the day ahead of the game. We want to start the day with 3 days before we die, right? I mean, heaven forbid, like a tsunami comes and you didn't stay hydrated, right? We're gonna see you woke up and drink water that day, right? In about 3 days. I'm getting a little bit morbid on it, but it is. It's a major part of homeostasis and how the body stays balanced. So within 30 minutes, 16 to 32 ounces of water, ideally electrolyte enriched water. And then the sunlight piece. It would be ideal if you got outside within 30 minutes of waking up and you spend about 10 minutes outside, right? Because we want to set that circadian rhythm that Dr. McMillan was talking about, right? So if we are observing the sunrise and or observing the sunset, our body will start to find the 24-hour clock that it needs to be on. Now, why is it important for sunrise and sunset? You actually have receptors in your eyeballs that understand the angle of the light that the sun's coming from. Right? So if you step outside for the first time at noon, your eyes know that the sunlight is overhead. Right? What we want though, is we want your eyes to lock in with side light. Right? We want the sun to be at the angles to understand that it's evening or daytime. Does that make sense? So ideally, you're getting outside for 10 minutes within that first 30 minutes. If you can't do it in the morning, or if you wake up early when the sun's not risen yet, we're gonna find a way to get outside at some point. And if you can't do sunrise, let's look at sunset. All right, so we wanna get in those angled lights for 10 minutes a day. Fortunately, I live about 10 minutes away. So when I walk here, I get my 10 minutes of sunlight in the morning. So just kind of find ways to do it. If you have a dog, walk your dog in the morning. Imagine waking up, grabbing your 16 to 32 ounces of water after 8 hours of sleep, taking your dog on a walk or going on a 10-minute walk as you drink your coffee, right? Making that part of that intentional routine for the day. The other thing that happens when we set ourselves up for success in the beginning of the day, we're gonna stack wins on top of each other, right? So if you wake up after 8 hours of sleep feeling refreshed and good, and then you hydrate before the day even starts, and you get your 10 minutes of sunlight before you've even gotten in the shower, you've got 3 victories now to start the day with, right? The opposite thing happens if we don't get that sleep. Now we're waking up late to go get our hydration. Most sunlight we got was on our way to work and we're sitting in our car, right? So we want to start our day with wins instead of starting our day with losses. Week 1, wake up, 16 to 32 ounces of water. Get 10 minutes of sunshine, if you can, 30 minutes before, and giving yourself 8 hours of sleep opportunity. What's that? So he talks about this in that video. You should watch it. Shift work makes it difficult. Absolutely makes it difficult. You have to figure out a way to set your circadian rhythm. So if you don't have the capacity to be sleeping at night, you're on different shifts. We got to figure out how to set that circadian rhythm as much as possible. Now, are you on the same shift, or does your shift change? Yeah, it's hard. So what you'll want to do is set your circadian rhythm the best you can. Now, one thing you can do, and you have to figure this one out, is you can stay on a traditional 24-hour cycle, even if you're working during an 8-hour typical time you would sleep, right? You would try to sleep 8 hours before or 8 hours after. But you still want to try to stay attached to the sun, and you want to eat when you would be eating on a traditional 24-hour cycle, right? So let's say you eat breakfast at 6 a.m., you eat lunch at noon, you eat dinner at 6 p.m. You would still want to hold on to that. And you want to try to avoid eating when you would be sleeping. But we can talk more about that. If you got shift work, that's definitely something that you should write me an email about or text me about. We can talk on the side because it is a little more complicated. They did a worldwide study. Somebody created an app and asked about, I think it was over 100,000 people downloaded it. And they would put in when they would go to sleep, when they would wake up. They took pictures of what they were eating. They were calorie counting on it. And it was all about the circadian rhythm. And what they found was shift workers have the hardest time maintaining homeostasis, and even their families suffer because they're waiting to eat, they're waiting to sleep, right? They have to be quiet when they're supposed to be loud, stuff like that. So shift work is something that you definitely have to put a little extra effort into. We can talk more about that one. I think that ideally you want to get 8 hours of sleep together. If you can't get 8 hours of sleep together, you get 2 now, 4 now, and 2 later. That's better than just trying to rest those 4 hours. Because there's a lot of stuff that happens. You want those 8 hours to be together because there's process that happens in the body when you're sleeping, when it comes to homeostasis, but one process has to finish before another process starts, right? So it's not like you fall asleep and then all of a sudden everything starts recovering, right? There's different processes that take place as others finish in that 8-hour period. So ideally, together. Yeah. Sleep is the hard one, but sleep is super, super important, right? If you're not getting the right amount of sleep, and we talk about that cortisol spike, there's tons of people that I've worked with that do everything perfect when it comes to nutrition. They're counting their calories, they're eating exactly what they're supposed to, they're not drinking alcohol, they're staying hydrated, and their results are not what they want. It's because they can't control that cortisol spike, right? So we have to figure out how to make sleep work. If we get to a point where we're getting 8 hours of sleep consistently, and we're getting our nutrition and our resistant, and we're hydrated, now we can start to look at other processes if it doesn't work. But we can't look at those processes until we do what we know works, right? So really important that we do everything we can to find the homeostasis. Now, I'm gonna be here at 10 o'clock every Saturday if you guys have questions, right? So there'll be a little bit more informal, more Q&A. On week 2, we're gonna look at movement. When I say movement, that's the resistance piece, right? So we're gonna look at creating a good resistance and movement routine. We're also gonna look at more sleep, but how can we fall asleep faster? So then we're gonna start talking about evening routines for week 2. And then we're gonna take hydration to another level, not just starting the day hydrated, but how much should you be consuming through the day, right? And then on week 3, we're gonna continue to work at movement, and we're gonna start looking at what we're consuming. Week 3, we're gonna start talking about nutrition. We're still, every week, carrying on as we go through. So we're gonna stack all this stuff as it comes through. And then in week 4, we're gonna look at where's the source of your food? How many times are you eating out? Are you preparing your own food, right? We'll meet again for another formal conversation just like this, where it'll be specifically about nutrition, right? But we're gonna spend a couple of moments here leading into it to get our journal set up and to get the process going, right? But what I really want you to concentrate on these next 4 weeks is establishing your sleep, getting that hydration, and finding a routine that you're outside. Now, let me read something here about sunlight real quick. sunlight exposure, even though we're talking about 10 minutes for the eyes, getting outside and being active is important. Vitamin D production, right? Sunlight triggers your skin to make vitamin D. You can consume vitamin D all you want, but if you're not in the sun, it's not going to synthesize. Right? Vitamin D is incredibly important for our systems. Circadian rhythm, we talked about that. Hormone balance, temperature regulation. Sunlight helps your body adapt to temperature change. Right? So if you're sitting at your desk constantly sweating because you're overheating, you need to build that homeostasis and build that adjustment by being out in the sun. It helps out a lot. And then, really importantly, it also helps the immune function. So not only do we want to get outside to set our circadian rhythm, we want to absorb some sunlight so that our body can be regulated and homeostasis is there. Hydration, essential for homeostasis, energy balance and reset. During your sleep, your body restores its energy stores. Your body restores energy, glycogen, and balances hormones like insulin and cortisol. This keeps your metabolism steady and prevents blood sugar swings daily. So hydration also helps us with that circadian rhythm. We want to go to bed hydrated. Now, it's important that you don't, at the end of the day, chug your hydration before you go to bed, because we want to be able to sleep and not get up and pee all night. Hormone growth, melatonin, cortisol, leptin, we talked about that. Nervous system recovery. Sleep clears waste from the brain, right? Through the glymphatic system. So you need to sleep for nervous system recovery. Immune function, deep sleep boosts immune system, and of course stress recovery. Bottom line, sleep is when your body does maintain without homeostasis, breaks down, and you lose control of energy, mood, immune defenses, and hormone balance. Any questions on what we're going to do this week?
I think we don't worry about the exact amount, but how much hydration?
Yeah.
How much water you get?
We'll do this in week 2, but if you want to get started, ideally, the big number. It's a big number, right? Now we'll give you, it's 96 ounces. I'll give you more details on that next week, but ideally, you consume 80 ounces of water, or you hydrate 80 ounces. I kept walking out of the camera, I just now realized that. You need 80 ounces the first 8 hours of the day. Because if we're consuming a bunch of water in the evening, it's going to interfere with sleep. So if you think about it, 16 ounces of water in the morning, and then over the next 8 hours, you want to consume 80 ounces of water. That is going to be our focus for week 2. I really just want you to focus on, you can do this week if you want to, but I really just want you to focus on getting the habit of waking up and consuming hydrating water, and hydrating yourself with water. Any other questions? Yes?
So the 96 ounces, is that only in
Technically no. Technically no, but most of us need to fill the bladder to feel 96 ounces. You should be drinking more. But we'll get to that. Any other questions? Anything you think that I missed? You want to get over? All right. So if you want to sign up, if you haven't signed up yet, CrossFit CF Oahu, I'll put it up here, .me/nutrition, that's where you sign up. I'm going to send an email to everybody that signs up today, that has signed up or signs up after today. Right, and you'll get an overview of what the challenge is going to be. There will also be a link for a questionnaire. We need that questionnaire filled out so that when we scan with you, we can kind of start to build your profile on how this nutrition challenge is going to work. Sound good? If you have any questions, or you can text the gym line. Cool. You'll get an email after you sign up, your welcome email. You'll get the link to fill out, and then you'll get the week 1 email. So I'm going to send you an email every week on Saturday at what you're going to do for that next week. All right, it's going to go into detail. There's going to be links for videos. I've got 3 videos on the email that I'm going to send you for this first week that I want you to watch. I'm going to put a little bit more detail of what we talk about in those emails. I'm going to reach out to you once or twice a week to let you check in on you. We'll text you or email you, find out how you're going, how you're doing, all right? If there's anything, any hangups that you have or any questions that you have, email me or text the gym line, and we can get it set before it becomes an issue or too big of a scheme. Cool. Any questions? That's all we got. Don't forget to get signed up, because if you don't sign up, I can't send you an email. I won't have a record of you doing this.
Thank you, Malachi.
You're welcome.
Uh,